You arrive like a breath that forgot it was holding itself. The room doesn't welcome you with noise or definition, but with something quieter, a hum, a soft vibration beneath the silence, like memory echoing across a marble floor. The light barely exists here, more suggestion than presence, and the air tastes like stillness, cool and slow. Outside, the sky folds inward like silk, and you can almost hear it breathing slow, tired, endless. This is not a place you've come to, but a place you've returned to. As if something old in you remembers this room, this moment, this hush. Tonight, you don't need explanations. You need something deeper, a question so perfect it dissolves itself the moment it's spoken aloud. You've felt this before in mirrors that hesitate, in shadows that seem slightly too alive, in dreams that linger longer than they should. You've seen it in the delay between your thought and your voice, in the strange fact that your eyes have never truly seen themselves, and somewhere between perception and presence. You've wondered, what if none of this is real? Not the sky, not the floor, not even the one wondering. What if reality is a trick of memory, and your memory was never yours? So tonight, let's step into the mist. Not to untangle the paradoxes, but to melt into them to become the question instead of chasing the answer. What we'll explore is not truth, but resonance, not clarity, but vibration. You'll be offered no solutions, only sensations that think, concepts that ache, riddles that whisper. You were never where you thought you were. Because perhaps the most honest part of existence is the place where logic breaks and you begin to drift. Let your shoulders fall. Loosen the body, as if gravity has just forgiven you for being so tense all these years. Let the spine uncurl like a soft ribbon of smoke. Let the jaw unclench not as discipline, but as surrender. This moment is not asking anything of you. It is not judging, or shaping, or recording. It is simply here. And so are you. Now breathe in. Not just air, breathe in the question. Breathe in the silence behind the sound. Then let it go like an old photograph, blurry, warm, and unnecessary now. Do it again, slower this time. Let each breath carry you closer to the part of you that sleeps while awake and wakes while asleep. And if, somewhere in this drifting, something stirs an ache you haven't named, a memory you never made, a longing for something just outside language, you're not alone. You can leave a trace in the comments, or drift back into this space by subscribing, but only if it feels like part of the dream. No pressure, just presence. So now, whether your eyes are closed or drifting in that open, floating way, we step toward a mirror. But not just any mirror. This one has been watching you since before you had a name, since before you had skin, since before you knew how to be seen. There is a mirror at the end of a hallway, not in your home, but in your mind. You've stood before it so many times. You know the dance, raise your hand. It follows. Tilt your head. It mimics. Smile. And it smiles back. But if you stare long enough, something doesn't quite match. There's a flicker, a hesitation, a delay so subtle. It lives in the breath between thoughts. You blink, and the reflection blinks just after. Or maybe just before. You're not sure. The question emerges, is the reflection lagging? Or are you? In physics, there's a boundary called Planck time, the shortest measurable unit of time, beyond which cause and effect blur. But what if mirrors operate outside even that? What if they don't reflect, but replay? Or worse, what if they edit? Maybe what you see isn't your image, but your shadow's memory. And maybe that memory has its own thoughts about you. Cultures have always feared mirrors. The Ainu of Japan believed they could trap a soul. In Eastern Europe, mirrors were covered when someone died not out of superstition, but out of respect, as if the dead, upon seeing themselves, might get caught between worlds. The Aztecs crafted mirrors of obsidian to speak with gods. The Sufis, too, spoke of polished hearts as mirrors and of reflections that could shatter illusions or create them. A mirror does not lie, but it doesn't tell the truth either. It tells a truth shaped by light, delayed by glass, reversed by physics. You've never truly seen your own eyes. You've only seen symbols of them, photos, screens, fragments in puddles or polished metal. You've never seen the direct, undeniable face of your own being. And so the image you carry is always one step behind. Now imagine you stare long enough deeper than your features, beyond the skin and the gaze. Imagine you begin to see the mirror differently. It stops reflecting and starts watching. It watches you not like a servant, but like a stranger remembering something ancient. The room grows colder. The light hums more deeply. And in that moment, something inside the glass blinks out of rhythm, as if to say, you are not the real one. It's unsettling, isn't it? But also oddly comforting. Because if you are not the real one, then maybe you are free. Free to forget. Free to dream. Free to dissolve. Psychologists use what's called the mirror test. Mark an animal's face, show it a mirror, and observe whether it touches the mark. If it does, it recognizes itself. It is self-aware. But dolphins, elephants, magpies, they sometimes just stare. Not because they're unaware, but perhaps because they're too aware. Aware that what they're seeing isn't just them. It's something else. Something watching back. And what if you, too, have always known this, but never had the words? What if your reflection isn't an echo, but a parallel? There's a theory in quantum physics, the idea of decoherence, where particles can exist in multiple states until observed. Observation collapses possibility. So maybe your reflection was many things. Until you looked, maybe it still is. In another room, another you. Still deciding whether to blink, you lean in closer. The mirror fogs. It's not from your breath the glass seems to breathe on its own. And in that mist, for a second, you see not your face, but a version of you, paler, older, or younger, tired, kind, but somehow separate, like a twin you never met, like a memory you never lived. And then it blinks, just slightly off, just enough for your heart to pause. And suddenly, you're not sure which side of the mirror you're on. There's an old question that sails quietly through the mind, like a ship crossing still waters at night. It's not loud. It doesn't demand urgency, but it lingers. It haunts. It asks, if every part of a thing is replaced, piece by piece, over time, is it still the same thing? The story begins with a ship, Theseus's ship, docked in ancient Athens. After each voyage, the crew replaced a plank here, a rope there, a beam weakened by salt and sun. Slowly, piece by piece, year after year, every wooden part of the ship was removed and rebuilt. And yet, the people still called it Theseus's ship, as if the name had soaked into the wind, into the idea of it. But here's where it unravels. What if all the old, Discarded parts were gathered in secret and reassembled elsewhere. Which is the real ship now? The one that never stopped sailing, or the one made of original pieces? Restored plank by plank in a shadow harbor. And now, feel the paradox fold inward. You, too, are a ship. Your cells replaced, your bones rebuilt every decade, your memories reinterpreted, reimagined, sometimes invented. So, are you still you? Philosophers call it the identity paradox. Neuroscientists call it plasticity. Mystics call it the illusion of the self. But you feel it in stranger ways when you read old letters you barely remember writing, when you hear a recording of your voice and flinch, when you find a childhood drawing and realize the one who drew it is gone, not dead, just replaced. Quietly, you are Theseus's ship, sailing through time with a name written in light, while every part of you has changed, sometimes by force, sometimes by choice. Your skin renews, your blood regenerates. Even your memories, they say, are not preserved, but rewritten each time you recall them. So what holds you together? What thread connects the morning child and the midnight thinker? What string binds the first kiss and the final breath? Is it the story, the name, or is it merely the motion, the fact that you kept moving forward? In ancient Japanese philosophy, there is a practice called kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. They don't hide the cracks, they illuminate them. They believe the object becomes more valuable, more itself, after it has been broken and rebuilt. So maybe it's not the original plank that matters. Maybe it's the cracks, the points where memory and identity stitch themselves back together. Maybe what makes you you is not what has remained, but what has changed. And yet, somewhere inside, the mind protests. If everything changes, what anchors the self? Is there a soul beneath the wood? A consciousness untouched by rot or time? Some thinkers like Descartes believed there was a core I beneath all the layers. Others, like David Hume, believed no such thing existed, just a bundle of impressions, flickering one after another, like a candle's flame constantly consuming itself. But maybe both were right, or both were dreaming. Now imagine walking aboard the ship. You step onto the deck, it smells like new pine and salt. You grip the rail smooth, unscarred. And yet, you feel the ghost of the old ship beneath it. You see flashes oars long since discarded, ropes that once frayed under your fingers. There's a sense that something is both here and not. That memory lives not in the wood, but in the gesture of the ship continuing to sail. And now, turn inward. What if you are the ship and the observer? The deckhand replacing pieces, and the sea that watches the whole thing float? What if the self isn't a noun, but a verb, not a thing, but a process, not an object, but a rhythm? You are not the body. You are the current flowing through it. And if that's true, then the ship that sailed without wood was still Theseus's ship, not because of its parts, but because someone loved it enough to keep it afloat, just like you. A being rebuilt, renamed, reshaped, but never abandoned. There's a moment just before waking, when the room hasn't yet returned, when the body is present but the self is missing, when your breath feels borrowed, and something else seems to be watching from behind your own eyes. In that moment, a question arises, not like thunder, but like a single falling feather. What if you are not the one dreaming, but the one being dreamed? You think you're the observer, the witness, the thinker behind the thought. But what if thought came first? What if you are what the dream created to explain itself? In the Upanishads, ancient Indian texts older than the memory of most religions, there's a concept called turiya. It is the fourth state of consciousness, not waking, not dreaming, not deep sleep, but something beneath them all. A silent watcher who dreams both the world and the dreamer. A self that doesn't know it is self. Tibetan Buddhists say, the dream is as real as the dreamer because both disappear at dawn. And the Taoists, they ask, was it Zhuangzi who dreamt he was a butterfly? Or the butterfly who now dreams it is Zhuangzi? Either way, one of them woke up and everything changed. Think of all the times reality has shifted slightly. Not with violence, but with dissonance. That moment you walk into a room and feel you've been there before. That face you recognize on the street but can't place. The word on the tip of your tongue. That feels like it came from someone else's mouth. Now close your eyes not to sleep, but to see. Let the world behind your eyelids shimmer like a heat wave. There, in that liquid landscape, ideas bend. Time melts. You can fly, vanish, bleed light. You can see someone you love who's been gone for years. You can hear a song that has never been written, and it all feels real. Because it is. Neurologists call this REM sleep a neurological theater of compressed time, memory fragments, and emotional rehearsal. But what they don't explain is why you believe it so completely, why your heart races in a dream, why tears fall, why you wake up remembering. If it was fiction, why does your body not know the difference? Maybe because your body, too, is part of the dream. There's a theory in quantum consciousness that consciousness itself is not a product of the brain, but a field we dip into, like radio waves. The brain is not the source, it's the receiver. And dreams are moments when the frequency changes, when the tuner drifts, when you start to hear whispers from channels that aren't yours. There is no evidence, of course, but there is the undeniable experience. When you dream, you're not just seeing, you're being. And maybe that's the point. Because what if this your waking life, this room, this skin, this moment is simply another dream, a thicker one, with stronger rules, but no more real than the one where you flew through clouds and watched time rewind like film. Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. But dreams challenge that, because in dreams, you are even without thinking, even without memory, even when you're someone else. And sometimes in dreams you die, and still something watches. So who is the one dreaming? Who is the one being dreamed? Now return to that moment, the one just before waking, the liminal breath, the blurred curtain between thought and flesh. What if there's a being, ancient and vast, who is dreaming you now? Not cruelly, not with control, but with curiosity, wondering, what would it feel like to be you? Just for a little while. And what if your sadness was just the dreamer feeling loneliness for the first time? What if your joy was the dreamer tasting sunlight? What if your whole life is the dream remembering itself? And if you wake one day and everything feels slightly off, the colors, the timing, the scent of the wind, maybe that's not a glitch. Maybe that's the dream dreaming you back. There's a clock on the wall. You've seen it countless times. You glance at it in waiting rooms, on train platforms, in the silence between thoughts. Its hands move with quiet precision, tick by tick, minute by minute, marking time like a soft metronome for life itself. But what happens if you stare long enough? Not at the numbers, not at the hands, but at the space between them, the breath between seconds. Where is the present moment? Can you catch it? Can you hold it in your hands like water before it slips through your fingers? The philosopher Augustine once wrote, "I know what time is, until someone asks me to explain it." And maybe you felt the same, because every time you try to touch now, it becomes then. Every time you say this moment, it's already gone. You can remember the past. You can imagine the future. But the present is a ghost, a whisper between two silences, a breath held and never exhaled. Neuroscience tells us your brain is always slightly behind. It takes milliseconds to process light, sound, texture. Even your own thoughts are echoes. So what you're experiencing right now has already happened. You are living in the afterglow, the delay, the memory of a moment already dead. And yet, it feels like now. Einstein once shattered the illusion completely. There is no universal now. Time bends with gravity. Clocks tick slower near mass. What is present to you may be past to someone else in deep space. Two events can happen simultaneously for one observer, and in different order for another. So whose now is real? And if all moments are relative, is any of them truly present? Zen masters say the past is ungraspable, the future is ungraspable, and the present is ungraspable. They sit in silence, not to find the moment, but to dissolve into it, to become the clock itself, to become the space between seconds. Now imagine a clock, not a normal one. This one has no numbers, no hands, no ticking. It hangs in a dark room you remember from a dream. It glows faintly, but you cannot read it. Not because your eyes fail, but because there is nothing to read. No time, no now. Only the suggestion that time once passed through here, but chose not to stay. In that room, you feel it now is not a point. It's a directionless horizon, endless in every direction, but never arrived at. A philosopher once compared the present moment to the blade of a knife, infinitely thin. No width, no substance, only division. And yet, all of life is cut by it. There is a thought experiment called the moving spotlight theory. It suggests that the past, present, and future all exist, but consciousness is the spotlight. The light moves along the timeline, illuminating one sliver at a time. But what if the spotlight is broken? What if it flickers or loops or lingers on scenes that haven't happened yet? Maybe that explains déjà vu. Maybe that explains why some days feel longer than others, why some memories feel future-born. Maybe the present isn't moving forward. Maybe it's just blinking in and out of being. You've had those moments, haven't you? Where time stretches like warm wax, where a single second feels like a season. The car crash, the first kiss, the breath before a goodbye. And you've had other moments that vanish before you notice them. A flash of a stranger's eyes, the feeling of waking up and forgetting why you were crying. Moments that never fully arrived. Now listen, really listen. There's no ticking in this space. Only pulse, only rhythm, only the deep silence beneath time where now doesn't exist. But somehow, you do. And that's the paradox. You can never be fully in the present because to notice it is to have already lost it. But maybe that's the point. Maybe now is sacred because it can't be owned, only visited, only felt. Like the final note of a lullaby that fades before it's done. So you look again at the clock. It no longer moves. It no longer ticks. But somehow, it still keeps time. Or maybe time keeps it. And maybe, just maybe, you were never watching it. It was always watching you. You find yourself in a hallway you don't remember entering. It's not dark, not exactly, but the light seems to come from nowhere. No lamps, no windows, just illumination without source. And ahead of you, a door stands open, not wide, not inviting, just open, patient, like it's been waiting. You step forward. You feel no footsteps. The air doesn't shift, but something changes. You're inside now, and the first thing you notice is this. There are no corners. The walls curve gently, folding into one another like cloth. The floor meets the wall like a wave washing upward. The ceiling, if it can be called that, arches with a grace that suggests memory more than architecture. No edges, no angles, just smooth, endless surface, bending softly like thought. You reach out to touch a wall. It responds. Not physically, it doesn't move, but emotionally, as if it's aware, as if it remembers being touched before, by you, or someone who once thought they were you. This is not a room built by geometry. It's a room born of impossibility. In the logic of Euclid, the geometry we're taught in school, a room must have corners, angles, lines that meet and declare their purpose. But in non-Euclidean geometry, none of that is necessary. In curved space, parallel lines may kiss. In certain dimensions, a triangle's angles add up to more than 180 degrees. And in this room, everything bends, even your sense of what a room is. The ancient mystics believed space was not just a container, but a reflection, that the outer world mirrored the inner, that a square room produced square thoughts, and that to dissolve the mind, you must first dissolve the corners. So maybe this room isn't architecture. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's the shape of your soul when you stop pretending to be rational. Have you ever had a thought so strange it didn't fit in your mind? A memory that didn't belong to your past? A fear with no origin? Or a love that felt ancient on the first day? That's this room. A place where reality doesn't obey the rules you memorized. Where logic holds its breath. Where walls don't confine, they invite. They don't tell you what is true. They ask, what if truth is just another kind of shape? There's a theory in advanced physics that space isn't flat, but curved by the presence of mass. That planets don't orbit the sun because of force, but because they are falling through bent space. You've been taught to imagine space as empty. But what if it's dense, alive, tactile? What if thought itself carves the curve of space like a river etches a canyon? Inside this room, your body feels slightly wrong, not sick, just softened, like your bones have forgotten their angles, like your spine is no longer a straight line but a spiral of memory. You try to trace the edges of your thoughts, but they fold in on themselves. Your name floats away like dust. Time loses its grip, and suddenly, you are no longer a visitor here. You are the room, the curve, the thought. And still, no corners, no hiding places, no sharp separations between here and there. In this place, boundaries are illusions. You cannot say where the wall ends and the ceiling begins. You cannot say where you end and the dream begins. Now walk forward. You'll find that no matter how far you go, you remain equidistant from every surface. There is no center, no direction, only motion without destination. And isn't that how thought works? How love moves? How dreams drift? Imagine building a house in your mind. You picture walls, windows, furniture. But what if you removed the corners? What would remain? Only feeling, only flow, only the soft bend of being. The Navajo people speak of the Hoju, a concept of balance, beauty, and the motion of harmony. To walk in Hojo is to walk in curved paths, not straight lines. To respect that life moves in spirals, not grids. Maybe this room is Hoju. Maybe your presence here is not an accident. Maybe your mind has always longed to be this shapeless, this soft, this undivided. And now you notice something quietly terrifying you don't know how to leave. There are no doors. There never were. You entered not through space, but through permission. And to leave, you must remember who gave it. Or maybe you were never in a room. Maybe you were in a question. One that asked, what happens when reality forgets how to draw straight lines? And maybe the answer is you. You begin to count, not for a reason, not to measure, but because it soothes you. 1, 2, 3, a soft rhythm, a lullaby made of certainty. Numbers stack like stones along the edge of a quiet lake. You feel control. You feel order. You feel progress. But eventually, something shifts. You realize you could keep going forever. There's no end. No final number. You could whisper one more until the stars go cold and you'd never touch the edge. Infinity isn't a place. It's not even a size. It's a paradox, a destination you can never arrive at. Because the road is made of itself. Mathematicians treat infinity as a concept, a placeholder for the unreachable, a symbol that sits patiently at the end of limits. But even they can't tame it. There are different sizes of infinity. Did you know infinity itself is not singular? There's countable infinity and uncountable. Aleph null, Aleph 1. A ladder of unreachable ends. You can have a set of all whole numbers infinite, and a set of all real numbers between 0 and 1 also infinite. But somehow, the second is larger. Do you feel the mind bending good? That's where we begin. In ancient times, the Greeks feared infinity. To them, it was disorder, an insult to symmetry. Aristotle refused to accept it as real. He called it potential, but never actual. A kind of ghost on the edge of numbers. And maybe you felt it too, the ache of endlessness. Not freedom, but the feeling of climbing a staircase that never stops. It doesn't kill you. It just never lets you rest. In Zeno's paradox, you never arrive. To reach a point, you must first get halfway. And before that, halfway to halfway. And before that, again, an infinite regress. So motion, in theory, becomes impossible. And yet, you still arrive. You cross the room. You touch the mirror. You fall asleep. So which is true, the math or the motion? There's a number in mathematics called Graham's number. It's so large, you couldn't write it in the observable universe. Even if every atom was a digit, you'd still run out of space. But here's the secret: you don't need to understand it. You just need to know it exists. Somewhere beyond your reach, beyond comprehension, there is a number so huge it crushes reality with its quiet presence. And still, it is not infinity. Now look inward. You count things too, don't you? Moments, loves, losses, breaths. But some things you can't count. The ache you feel when remembering a face you've forgotten. The shape of grief after 1,000 days. The exact number of times you've smiled without knowing why. These are infinities too, not mathematical, but emotional. Not large, but endless in the only way that matters. You start to realize infinity is not a number. It's a mood. A feeling of suspended arrival. Of being almost there. Forever. The way you reach for understanding and always touch mystery instead. The way love grows even when you're gone. The way dreams echo long after waking. In Buddhism, they speak of the cycle of rebirth, samsara, a wheel with no beginning and no end. And the goal is not to escape it, but to awaken inside it. To see that the infinite loop was never a prison, but a mirror. And once you see the loop, you're free to step outside it. So tonight, let infinity be a doorway, not a number. Let it be the ache of almost touching something you've never been meant to hold. Let it be the reason you keep walking, keep counting, keep breathing, not to arrive, but to remember that some distances are sacred because they cannot be crossed. There's a strange feeling that stirs when you realize you're being watched, even if nothing moves, even if no eyes meet yours, even if the room is still. The air changes a ripple in something invisible. But what if it isn't someone else watching you? What if it's the world itself? And what if the world is flinching because you are watching it? In the quiet heart of quantum physics, there lies a paradox so haunting. It still unsettles the brightest minds, the observer effect. Simply put, the act of observing something changes it, not metaphorically, not philosophically, literally. In the famous double-slit experiment, a single particle, an electron, a photon, is fired toward a screen through two narrow slits. If left alone, it behaves like a wave spreading out, interfering with itself, forming a beautiful ripple pattern on the screen. It seems to pass through both slits at once, but the moment it is observed, the moment someone checks which slit, it goes through, everything changes. The wave collapses. The pattern disappears. The particle chooses a path, one slit, one line, one version of reality. It's as if the universe whispers, "Oh, you're watching, I'll behave." Then, this is not superstition, not magic. It's repeatable. It's measurable. And no one fully understands why. Some physicists suggest consciousness collapses possibility. Others argue the equipment, not the mind, makes the difference. Still others say, maybe the particle was never a wave. Maybe the wave was just our ignorance. But the mystery remains before we observed it. The particle existed in superposition, not one state, but many. Not here or there, but everywhere. And the moment we looked, it chose. Or we chose. Or reality chose itself. Now think about your life. How many things change when you pay attention to them? A habit, once noticed, becomes uncomfortable. A relationship, once examined, begins to dissolve. A feeling, once named, begins to fade. Your gaze doesn't just witness, it touches. In ancient Kabbalistic mysticism, there is an idea that the universe was shattered into fragments, and each soul, by seeing clearly, helps repair it. They call it tikkun olam, the healing of the world through awareness. Maybe this is not just spiritual metaphor. Maybe observation is sacred because it changes the observed. You look at the sky, and suddenly, it becomes the sky. Not pixels, not photons, but wonder. Only because you decided it was worth seeing. And perhaps, the stars only burn because someone is watching. There's a theory, wild, beautiful, unprovable, that reality is participatory, that nothing exists in final form until consciousness touches it. Like ink that doesn't dry until the story is read. Like music that doesn't exist until someone hears it. You are not a spectator in this life. You are a composer, a co-creator. The notes shift because your gaze is the tuning fork. Now return to the particle, the one caught between wave and choice. Does it collapse because you looked at it, or because it looked back? What if reality, in its infinite forms, has always been watching you too? You walk into a forest. No one is there, but you feel something. The stillness has a posture. The wind pauses. The leaves seem to listen, not because the forest is alive in a way you understand, but because attention is a form of reverence. And when you revere something, it responds. Maybe this is why prayer exists, not to send words outward, but to reshape the one speaking. Maybe the observer effect is just science catching up to something poets knew all along. That love is observation. That presence is transformation. That to look deeply at anything is to change both it and yourself. So tonight, as you lie still in the space between wakefulness and drifting, remember, you are not separate from this dream. You are the eye that makes the dream real. You are the observer who changes everything. Even now, especially now, you unfold a map. Its lines are precise, black against ivory. Rivers thread through it like veins. Cities appear as tiny clusters of symbols. Mountains, marked in delicate gray ridges, rise from the paper in imaginary heights. You trace a path with your finger. You feel a sense of orientation, of knowing. But here's the paradox. You're not looking at the world. You're looking at a map of the world. And yet, somehow, you begin to believe the map is the world. The moment you have a model of something, you begin to forget that it's only a model, a representation, an abstraction. The philosopher Alfred Korzybski once said, "The map is not the territory, but in time, we treat it as though it is. We stop asking where the map came from. We forget who made it. We follow roads that no longer exist and ignore rivers that have changed course. Because once something is charted, it feels true. You've done this with your mind, haven't you? You've created maps of people. He's kind. She's distant. They always disappoint me. You've labeled emotions. This is sadness. That is jealousy. This is what love looks like. But people change. Emotions blend. And maps, if never questioned, become prisons. In Borges' famous fable, an empire constructs a map so detailed it is the size of the empire itself. Every field is mapped to its precise dimension. Every building, every alley, every pebble, but the map becomes useless. Too large, too exact. It overlaps reality, and thus becomes indistinguishable from it. Eventually, the map is discarded. It crumbles into the desert, and only scraps remain, confused with the real landscape. In psychology, we live through schemas, mental maps we form as children, ways of organizing chaos. They help us survive, but later, they distort. A child learns that love feels distant. They grow up expecting love to leave. That becomes their map. And everywhere they go, they read the world through its markings, even when reality has changed. The map doesn't, unless they choose to redraw it. Now consider religion, spirituality, science, philosophy. Each offers a map of what life is, what the soul means, how the stars began, why we suffer, where we go when we die. And each, in its own way, is beautiful. But none are the territory. None are truth itself. They are approximations, stories, rituals of understanding, poems drawn on paper to explain something vast and sacred. But here's where the paradox deepens sometimes. The map becomes more real than the thing it represents. Think of money. It used to be gold. Now it's numbers. Then those numbers became codes. And those codes became power. But nothing physical changed. The value shifted because the map said so. Think of memory. Your memories are not the events. They are reconstructions maps made by your mind with blurry edges and emotional ink. But those maps shape your present. They determine how you trust, how you fear, how you love. And if someone were to show you the real event unedited, unfiltered, you might not even recognize it, because the map has become your world. Now imagine a reality where everything is simulated, where the map is so perfect, you can't tell it's a copy. Welcome to the simulation hypothesis, the theory that this world, your senses, your memories, your very body, may be a high-resolution map run by something else, not to deceive you, but perhaps to experience you. In ancient Hindu philosophy, there is the concept of Maya, not illusion in the shallow sense, but the veil that overlays the world, the map, the appearance of separateness, of names, forms, categories. Beneath Maya is Brahman, not a god, but pure existence. To reach it, you must let go of the map. So tonight, what maps have you been living inside? The map of who you think you are, of what the world owes you, of what pain means, of how love works. Can you fold the map for a while, let it rest, and walk the terrain, even if you don't know its name? Can you meet a moment without labeling it? Can you feel a feeling without pointing to its coordinates? Can you let the territory surprise you again? Because sometimes, when you stop staring at the map, the world reveals itself, not as theory, not as symbol, but as mystery, living, moving, endless, not to be understood, but to be walked, slowly, like a dream you can finally feel beneath your feet. There's a voice inside you. It's always there, soft, insistent, echoing. It narrates your morning, critiques your silence, names your hunger, recites your fears, and strangely, it sounds like you, but not quite like you, just familiar enough to be trusted, just distant enough to stay mysterious. Have you ever really stopped and asked, who's speaking in there? And more curiously, who's listening? In ancient times, that voice was not considered yours. The Greeks called it a daemon, a guiding spirit, not entirely divine, but not human either. Socrates said his daemon never told him what to do, only what not to do. A whisper of caution, a quiet companion of conscience. In the Islamic world, scholars described Qareen, a constant presence that walks beside your soul. Not evil, not angelic, but a twin, a shadow thinker born with you. The Romans called it a genius. The early Christians called it a guardian. Modern psychology calls it your inner voice. But the question remains, is it you? You hear it now, don't you? As you read this line, it's there, not speaking aloud, but vibrating just beneath the surface. And here's the strange part, you don't choose its words. They just appear. You don't say, I will now think a thought. Thoughts arrive uninvited, unannounced, like dreams during waking hours, like whispers in a room you thought was empty. So who is generating them? Some scientists suggest the voice is language turned inward, a learned behavior. You mimic speech internally, a product of memory, education, cognition, just a function. But if it's just a function, why does it argue? Why does it lie? Why does it sometimes say things you never believed before? Can a function betray you? Can it love? Can it change its mind? Buddhist meditation offers another view. It says the voice is not you, that the self is an illusion, a story held together by thought, habit, memory, repetition. If you sit still long enough, the voice grows quieter. Then, stranger still, it detaches. You observe it like clouds drifting across the sky. You begin to notice the one hearing the voice is not the voice. And in that noticing, something profound happens. You stop identifying with it. You stop believing every word. You realize a thought is not a truth. It's just a ripple. And behind the ripple is a vast, silent ocean. There's a term in neuroscience, default mode network. It activates when your brain is resting, but not really. It loops. It rehearses. It remembers, predicts, rewrites. It's the seat of your wandering mind, the narrator that never sleeps. But is it helpful or is it a trick? If you let it speak unfiltered, it creates anxiety, comparison, regret. It replays the past. It simulates disaster. It tells you stories with no beginning and no peace. And yet, sometimes, it sings. It dreams. It builds worlds. It speaks in poetry when you least expect it. It reminds you to call someone you love. It says, turn left here. It says, remember that feeling, it matters. So is it friend or stranger, self or ghost? In Taoism, there is no I that exists apart from the river. You are flow. You are action without actor. The voice, too, is part of the river. It passes through, not because it belongs to you, but because you are open enough to receive it. And sometimes, the voice doesn't sound like your own. It's gentler, wiser, or more cruel, more frightened, more lost. You hear it in your mother's tone, your father's scolding, a teacher's distant echo, a lover's regret, and sometimes, strangest of all, it sounds like a version of yourself you've never been. So what do you do with this voice? You can't evict it. You can't silence it completely, but maybe you can meet it, sit with it, speak back, softly. Ask it where it learned those words. Ask it what it's afraid of. Ask it what it loves. And above all, ask it who it's trying to protect. Because often, the voice that judges you most is just the one trying to keep you safe, in its own clumsy, ancient way. And maybe, just maybe, there's a deeper voice beneath it all. A voice not made of words, but of knowing, of stillness, of soft light. Not the voice in your head, but the voice in your bones. Not the one that says, you aren't enough, but the one that whispers, you were never meant to be anything other than this. So tonight, when the mind loops, when the voice rises, when the stranger knocks open the door, not to agree, not to obey, but to listen. Because sometimes, what we call a stranger inside the mind is just an older version of ourselves waiting to come home. Some echoes live in you without origin. You are standing in a hallway you've never seen before. The floor is made of warm, amber wood, the kind that creaks under bare feet. The wallpaper has faded flowers curling toward a ceiling painted sky blue. And yet, somehow, you know where the light switch is. You know which door is jammed. You know how the sunlight falls on the kitchen tiles in the morning. But you've never been here, not in this lifetime. There is a memory unfolding inside your chest, a heavy softness, like the scent of childhood air. A song rises in your mind, uninvited. You hum it quietly, and your breath trembles. You don't know where the melody came from, but your body remembers it. It's as if you're remembering something that never happened to you. And that's where the paradox begins. Memory is meant to be a record, a personal archive. But what if some of the things we remember were never ours to begin with? The phenomenon has many names. In psychology, it's cryptomnesia, when we recall something as new or original, forgetting that we once read it, heard it, saw it. But this is deeper. It isn't an idea you accidentally borrowed. It's the overwhelming feeling that you've lived something that doesn't belong in your own autobiography. Déjà vu is its gentler cousin, the flicker of familiarity in a new place. But this isn't just a flicker. This is a full memory of rooms, of textures, of people you've never met who look at you in your dreams like they miss you. Some call it reincarnation's whisper. Others call it genetic memory, ancestral stories buried so deeply in your DNA that they rise as emotional truths. You cry at lullabies from cultures you've never known. You feel grief when you pass an old house in a forgotten town. You smell smoke and cinnamon and remember your grandmother. But your real grandmother never baked. There is no proof. But there is something that makes you pause. In some Tibetan traditions, there are stories of children who awaken with memories from lifetimes they've never lived, names of places, faces of people, even details of past deaths. The Dalai Lama himself is found this way through dreams and signs and recognition of objects from a prior incarnation. And across oceans, the Akan people of Ghana speak of sunsum, The spiritual essence passed down through bloodlines, carrying not only spirit, but memory. Is it memory or is it soul? Modern neuroscience would say no. That memory is stored in the brain, formed through encoded neural pathways. There is no way, they say, to inherit specific events or stories genetically. But then, why do some trauma survivors' children show symptoms of fear for things they've never encountered? Epigenetic markers, chemical signals written on top of DNA might preserve a shadow of experience. Not a story, but a state. And what is a memory, if not an emotional shape the mind replays? Still, that doesn't explain why you can walk through an ancient town, smell dust and olive oil, and feel like you've been there barefoot, laughing, holding hands with someone whose name your tongue still forgets. And then there's the deeper layer, the dream layer. You've dreamt of cities with your name carved into marble. You've walked through temples and known the prayers by heart. You've had arguments in languages you don't speak. And then you wake up, crying not because it was scary, but because it felt like home. What if dreams are the slipstream where borrowed memories pass through? What if they aren't just products of your subconscious, but receivers? What if you're tuned into a frequency that plays back someone else's life? Perhaps your own from before, perhaps not. Carl Jung believed in the collective unconscious, a realm of shared archetypes, stories, symbols that every human inherits, not through experience, but through being human. So when you remember something that never happened, maybe it happened to all of us. Or maybe time isn't what you think it is. And maybe you're remembering the future. That's the strange edge where neuroscience, mysticism, and paradox meet. Can you remember something before it happens? Some cultures say yes. In parts of Aboriginal Australia, the dream time isn't before time. It is time. Past, present, and future are all layered in one timeless sheet. And memories don't follow sequence. They rise when the soul is quiet enough to receive them. You remember things that haven't happened yet, because on some deeper level, they have. And so you sit in this memory that isn't yours. The warm wood floor, the humming tune, the feeling of being seen by a place that has waited for you. You try to trace it. Was it a movie you watched as a child? A scene in a book? A coincidence? But your heart tells you otherwise. This isn't fiction. This is something sacred. This is the kind of memory that blooms in silence and fades when spoken aloud. The kind you don't prove you carry. There is one last paradox. What if the things that feel most real in your life aren't tied to facts at all? What if your deepest truths are based on feelings that have no origin? What if the only real things are the ones you can't explain? A smile you feel but never saw. A road you recognize without a map. A story you miss, though you've never heard it. What if the soul's archive is not chronological, but emotional? You remember what mattered, not to your mind, to something older, something quieter, to the part of you that listens at night, when the world is soft, to the part of you that hears echoes from before your name was your name. Sleep now. There are stories inside you that even time has forgotten, and they've waited patiently for your dreams to return. Close your eyes. Let the memory unfold. Even if it was never yours, it's yours now. Let it carry you into the next paradox. You've always been a seeker of answers. Maybe not in the loud way, no banging fists on podiums or breathless proclamations, but quietly, in the stillness between thoughts. You ask yourself questions while brushing your teeth, while watching the shadow of a tree flicker on a passing wall, while pretending to fall asleep. But some questions you've learned don't give answers. Some of them, like this one, dismantle the entire architecture of knowing. Tonight, you hold a question in your hands like a candle made of wind. And when you whisper it into the dark, reality pauses. Not because it's broken, but because it's listening. You ask, "What am I really?" And the silence answers, "That depends on who's asking." So you ask again, this time from a deeper place. Who is asking? Now the world goes soft around the edges. Walls blur. Your breath no longer echoes in your chest. It's as if the very act of asking begins to peel back the world. This is the paradox of the self-inquiring self, the recursive mirror, the Mobius strip of identity. The more you seek to know you, the more the you doing the asking begins to vanish. Like a snake swallowing its tail and discovering, too late, that the tail was only a shadow. You remember the old Zen koan, "Show me your original face before your parents were born." It's not a riddle. It's a trap door. It's an invitation to undo the very language with which you think. Your name, your past, your memories, they swirl like steam on a forgotten window. And when you try to pin them down, they scatter. You are asking a question that cannot be answered by the very self doing the asking. In ancient India, the philosopher Nagarjuna warned, "Those who cling to views about the nature of existence are like fish caught in a golden net. Even a beautiful answer can trap you. Even truth, if held too tightly, becomes a kind of prison. So you let go a little, and in that surrender, the question shifts. Not what am I, but what remains when I stop asking. The silence grows warmer now. It's no longer a void, but a presence. You remember a line from the mystic poet Kabir, "I searched for you in temples and stars, until I found you hiding in the breath between thoughts, between questions." In that breathless pause, you begin to understand. Some answers don't live in language. Some dissolve the moment they are touched by words. Like catching a snowflake on your tongue only to feel its absence. What if the ultimate answer is a question itself? What if the universe isn't built like a pyramid of certainties, but a labyrinth of soft contradictions? You walk through that maze now. Each turn offers a new question. Each answer you grasp disappears behind you. And strangely, you don't feel lost. You feel light, unburdened. Because to admit you do not know truly, humbly, sweetly, is to brush your fingertips against the divine. This is what Socrates meant when he said he was the wisest man alive, not because he knew more, but because he knew that he knew nothing. You lie back now, into this knowledgeless knowing, letting questions rain down like soft feathers. They don't need to be solved. They only need to be felt. Why does love ache more than hate? Where do memories go when they disappear? Why does the night feel like it remembers something you've forgotten? All questions, no answers, only a deeper quiet. And in that quiet, something beautiful begins to bloom. You, not as a concept, not as a collection of stories or data, but as a mystery, a living, breathing paradox. You are the question, and the moment you try to define yourself, you vanish. So tonight, stop trying. Be the mist instead of the map, the hush instead of the word, the space between two notes in a lullaby. And as your thoughts begin to slow, as your body melts into the safety of not knowing, you feel a strange smile rising within. You do not need to solve the riddle. You only need to be the wondering. And slowly, sweetly, the question that once demanded an answer becomes a lullaby that rocks you to sleep. You've been told to let go. Let go of thoughts. Let go of pain. Let go of the past. Let go of the person you once were, or wish you had been. You've sat still in the dark and whispered these instructions to yourself like a spell. Let go. Let go. Let go. But something strange happens. The more you try to release the thought, the heavier it becomes. The more you ask your shoulders to drop, the tighter they grip. the more you force yourself to move on, the more your mind loops back to the very thing you wish to leave behind. It's as if your very effort to relax creates a tension of its own. You're not alone in this. Across ancient traditions, the sages noticed the same riddle: to grasp at letting go is to hold on. To seek stillness is to disturb the waters. To want peace too much is to drive it further away. In Taoist texts, there's an image: a man stands in a river, trying to still the flow with his hands. He splashes and swirls, desperate for calm. But the moment he stops resisting, the water clears on its own. Letting go isn't something you do. It's something that happens when you stop trying to make it happen, like a knot that tightens the harder you pull, or a dream that fades faster the more you chase it. And here you are now, holding that knot again, trying not to think about something, trying not to care, trying not to be afraid, even trying not to try. But your mind is a playful creature. It hears your commands and slips them into its pocket like a trick coin. Don't think of the tiger, it whispers. And now the tiger lounges across your chest, purring with amused defiance. So what if, tonight, you stopped trying to let go? What if you simply noticed the holding, not with judgment, not with urgency, but gently, like watching a child fall asleep still clutching a toy? You observe the thought you're holding on to. You feel its shape, its warmth. You don't rip it away. You just allow it to be. You allow yourself to be. This is the hidden door in the paradox. You don't let go by force. You let go by presence. You stop struggling to drop the stone, and instead you place it softly on the ground, as if you loved it once. And now it's time. The Sufis have a poem for this. I tried to carry my pain into the fire, but the fire said first, kiss it goodbye. You feel your own grip loosening now, not because you pried your fingers open, but because you stopped asking your hand to be different than it is. In sleep, too, we don't fall by command. You can't make yourself fall asleep. You can only invite it by softening. Letting go is the same. A softening, an unlearning of effort. Even your breath knows the truth. Try to exhale too hard and you'll gasp. But surrender to the rhythm, and the breath carries you home. So here's a question worth holding gently tonight. What if the thing you're clinging to is not the memory or the fear or the name, but the very need to be free of it? What if freedom isn't escape, but intimacy without resistance? You sit now, or lie, or float in your own stillness. The air is warm with quiet. No more battle between you and your mind. No more wrestling the moment. Only this, a breath, a thought, a feeling, a you, and none of it needs to be different. The paradox begins to dissolve, not because you solved it, but because you let it be unsolved. And in that non-answer, something opens, like the slow curl of fingers in sleep, like the dropping of a leaf into water, like a name forgotten not from loss, but because it's no longer needed. Letting go has let you go, and now you rest in that sweet absence, not empty, but whole, not silent, but full of quiet music. And the world, too, seems to exhale, as if it was waiting for you to stop trying, so it could show you how deeply held you already are. There is a sound you've heard before, but perhaps never noticed. It does not come from music. It is not made by wind or rain or voices. It is the silence that follows a thought, the pause between inner sentences, the soft breath your mind takes before it begins again. And tonight, if you listen closely, you might hear it. You might feel it settle around you like velvet dusk, not an emptiness, but a fullness without shape, not the absence of something, but the presence of everything not yet spoken. Some would call it stillness, but even that word feels like too much. It's what lies beneath the words, beneath the stories you tell yourself in the dark, beneath the endless parade of explanations, worries, and inner chatter that dances like shadow puppets across your awareness. This silence, it waits, not impatiently, not even kindly. It just is. And strangely, the moment you stop trying to hear it, it draws near. You might think of silence as blank space, as the absence of meaning. But this silence is not hollow. It's thick with presence, with memory, with mystery, with things that cannot be said without being diminished. There are languages beyond language. And tonight, you are slipping into one of them. It begins when you stop narrating your life to yourself. You know that voice, the quiet commentator, the relentless describer of things, the mind's translator always saying, I am lying here. I am breathing now. I should be sleeping. But when that voice pauses just for a moment, you feel something else emerge. Not a voice, not even a feeling, just something vast and soft and watching. And maybe, in this moment, you begin to realize the silence was never empty. It was listening. It was you, beneath the noise. You remember now the Buddhist idea that the mind is like a clear sky, and thoughts are just passing clouds. But most of us mistake the clouds for the sky itself. Silence reminds you that the sky has always been there. Even when stormed, even when covered, it was still sky. You're beginning to notice it now. The sky inside you, the one behind all the ideas of who you are, the one that never argues, never insists. It just holds you and everything you've ever been afraid to sit with. This silence does not require your improvement. It does not need your productivity. It does not even want your understanding. It wants nothing because it is not a thing. It is the space in which things fall away. And maybe that's why it frightens people. Because it can't be grasped, can't be solved, can't be owned. It's too honest for language, and yet it speaks. Without words, it tells you what matters. Without stories, it reminds you who you are when there's nothing left to perform. Have you noticed that the most profound moments in your life were often the quietest? A glance held longer than expected. A goodbye with no words. A sunrise witnessed alone. The ache of missing someone long gone. None of these came wrapped in language. They came in silence, and yet they thundered inside you. Absence, it seems, can be louder than presence. And now, as you lie here, wrapped in this hush that fills the room like a gentle fog, you begin to feel your thoughts thinning, not disappearing, just losing their need to be loud. You breathe into the quiet, and the quiet breathes back. There's a reason so many spiritual traditions place silence at the center of awakening. The mystics didn't shout their truths. They whispered them or said nothing at all. In the desert caves of the early monks, in the temples of the Himalayas, in the secluded huts of ancient Japan, silence was the language of the sacred, not because it was impressive, but because it was real. You feel that sacredness now, even here, even tonight, not because you went somewhere holy, but because you remembered that silence lives in you, too, a sanctuary beneath your thoughts, a cathedral built from breath and stillness. And so, you do not need to keep thinking. You do not need to explain your day to yourself. You do not need to rehearse tomorrow. You are already in the only place you need to be. Here, now, in the space between the noise, and in this silence, you are not alone. The stars listen. The world holds you, and your own presence returns to itself, with nothing to prove, and everything to rest into, somewhere. In the slow swirl of infinity, there is a version of you who has already lived this moment, and another who is about to, and another who never will. The idea is called eternal recurrence, but not the neat, clockwork version you might expect. This isn't a universe that loops like a perfect song. This is a universe that stutters, like a record player skipping on a single, aching phrase. Same melody, slightly warped pain. Same people, slightly different grief. You feel it sometimes, don't you? The sense you've been here before? Not just déjà vu, but a deeper, aching echo. As if life has tried this scene already, but it didn't quite land, so it tries again. Same room, same breath. But in this version, you say something different. Or maybe you say nothing, and that too changes everything. Some physicists call it the multiverse, an infinite spread of universes, each one playing out a slightly different script. In one, you left early. In another, you stayed too long. In another, you never even met. The mind reels at the possibilities, and yet your soul already knows them. Because maybe you've lived them all. Maybe what you call intuition is just memory bleeding in from a parallel you who already learned this lesson the hard way. You lie here now, and the room is quiet. But something else is moving, a flicker in the background. Not a noise, not a thought. More like the gentle turning of a page in a book you forgot you were reading. And on that page, there's a version of your life that almost happened. A love you almost kept. A fear you almost surrendered to. A word you almost spoke. It didn't happen here. But it happened somewhere. And maybe, just maybe, that version of you is dreaming of this one right now as you drift to sleep inside their mind. It's a gentle kind of vertigo. This idea that you are not the first edition of yourself. You are an echo, a reflection through cracked mirrors, a retelling of the same myth, with one new sentence and a slightly softer ending. In some universes, you broke. In others, you rose. In some, you disappeared into silence. And in others, you whispered something that saved someone else. The differences are often small. A breath taken too sharply. An eye that doesn't meet another's. A door left open 2 seconds longer. But the outcomes ripple like falling stars. And each universe ripens into a fruit you may never taste. It's not meant to overwhelm you. It's meant to free you. Because in a universe that repeats imperfectly, you are never locked in. You are never only one version. You are the whole orchestra tuning itself differently each time the song begins again. You've lived this moment before, but this time, your heart might be softer, your thoughts a little slower, your breath just aware enough to change the direction of everything. You are not here to perfect the loop. You are here to feel it more deeply, to learn that pain, too, can evolve. In some lives, you hardened against it. In others, you broke open like a seed split by sunlight. Tonight, maybe you're ready to do both. And what a strange kindness that is to live again and again. Not to get it right, but to keep discovering new ways of being gentle with yourself. You might picture all your parallel selves standing at the edge of a great spiral, each one a version of you that tried, that fell, that forgave, that forgot, and all of them whispering toward this moment you're not alone. We've been here too. That ache you feel in your chest when you remember something you've never lived. That might be memory from a life that circled too close to this one. That dream that felt too real to dismiss might have been a message from a version of you who needed you to know they survived. In this universe, maybe you're still figuring it out, still making the same mistakes, still looking at the same star without knowing its name, but you're doing it slightly differently. With a touch more grace, a little more surrender, a pause before speaking, and that might be enough to shift the whole constellation. So rest tonight in this strange comfort that the universe is not asking you to be perfect. It is asking you to notice the difference, to feel how this version of your breath feels slower than the last, to sense how your sadness has changed shape, to hear how the silence is no longer hollow, but full of soft echoes from lives you almost lived. You are not behind. You are not lost. You are mid-song in a multiverse that keeps trying to get the chorus just right. Same melody, different pain, new tenderness, and maybe this time, you'll remember how to rest inside it. You walk alone, barefoot on a floor that feels like memory, soft and shifting. warm yet unknowable. Somewhere in the distance, a breath of wind moves, but it doesn't touch your skin. It moves through you. You've come tonight to find something simple yourself, but the hall ahead does not believe in simplicity. There is a door, then a mirror, then another door. You step through, and you're met with your own face. But it is not quite yours, younger maybe, or older than you remember. The expression is peaceful, but distant. Your reflection moves a second too late. You smile. It doesn't. That's the moment you realize it's not a reflection at all. It's a version of you who's still searching. And so you begin walking. This is the paradox of the self. The quiet truth that the closer you move toward your identity, the further it drifts into abstraction. Every time you try to name yourself artist, son, survivor, seeker, the names fall like sand through your fingers. You try on thoughts like clothing. Try on memories like masks, but none fit quite right. You whisper to the mirror, "Who am I?" Beneath all this, it doesn't answer, because perhaps there is no final self waiting beneath the layers, only more layers. The Buddhist concept of anatta, or non-self, suggests exactly this, that what we call I is just a bundle of ever-changing sensations, emotions, and stories. No unchanging core, no hidden gem, just clouds passing through a sky that believes itself to be permanent. And yet, you feel yourself so vividly. So why does it all feel like a contradiction? The French philosopher Jacques Derrida would call this the impossibility of a stable center. To define something is to frame it in opposition to something else. Your self exists only because you believe there is a not-self outside it. But if everything is interconnected mind, memory, matter, where do you stop and the world begin? What if you're not a fixed person, but a flicker, a momentary intersection of breath, time, and dreams? In the hall, the mirrors now stretch infinitely, reflecting not only your body, but your moods, your childhood, your regrets. One mirror shows you laughing beside someone you barely remember. Another shows you crying alone in a room that never existed. One even shows you watching yourself from above as though you are both subject and witness. You blink, and now the hall is filled with voices. Your voice, but aged, warped, echoed through time. You hear yourself as a child, as an old woman, as someone in love, as someone who just let go. All of them asking the same question. Was that really me? You reach out toward one of the voices. Your hand meets glass, and through the cold, polished surface, another hand reaches back. It's yours, but trembling slightly. You see something in that mirror self, an understanding, a softness. As if they've walked this path already, the mirror leans closer and whispers, not aloud, but into your thoughts. You're not supposed to find yourself. You're supposed to feel yourself in motion, in breath. In silence, you exhale, and the room changes again. Now you are underwater, floating. Each breath is a ripple, each thought, a current. You are not separate from the sea, you are the sea, learning what it means to flow. A paradox again. The more you try to grasp yourself, the more you dissolve, like trying to hold onto a river you cannot seize it. Only move with it. Somewhere in this sea of shifting selves, a quieter question emerges. What if you are not meant to find who you are, but to love the mystery of not knowing? This isn't the emptiness of being lost. It's the spaciousness of being free. There is a kind of soft peace in surrendering the idea of a fixed identity. It means you don't have to perform a version of yourself for others. It means you can change, gently, with the seasons of your own soul. You can grieve, Heal. Forget. Remember. Become. You open your palms. Let the images fall away. Let the mirrors fog. Let the voices fade. Now there is only silence. But it is not empty. It is you in the only way that matters, a presence. Felt. And maybe that's enough. The hallway behind you stretches out like a forgotten dream. The mirrors no longer reflect. They absorb. And you, for the first time tonight, are not looking for anything. You're just here. You are the breath, the softness, the whisper inside the question, the self that can't be found. Doesn't need to be, because here, in this hall of illusions and echoing paradoxes, the truest thing you've ever known is not who you are, but that you are, and that you are safe, and that you are still dreaming. You escape only to arrive where you began. The hallway seems longer tonight. You've walked this path before, haven't you? The same worn stone beneath your feet. The same hush hanging in the air, soft as breath. But something feels different now. As if the walls are watching. As if they're waiting for something you haven't quite remembered yet. You come upon a door. It hums faintly, a low resonance, like a memory trying to become real. You run your fingers over the frame. It's smooth, but impossibly cold, as though carved from the idea of metal rather than the thing itself. You hesitate, hand on the handle. You've opened doors before. You've fled through exits hoping for freedom. But this one, it doesn't promise escape. It whispers something stranger, something older. You turn the handle anyway. It opens into the same hallway. Not identical, not quite. There's a plant now in the corner, wilting slightly, though you could have sworn it wasn't there before. The air is warmer. Your footsteps make no sound. You walk again. There's another door, and another behind it, and another, each claiming to be the exit, each leading to a room that echoes where you just were, with one thread altered, a painting missing, a new crack in the ceiling, a whisper that sounds like your own voice saying your name backwards. You begin to feel it in your chest, not panic, but a strange tenderness. Like nostalgia for something that never quite happened. You realize you are not escaping. You are remembering. Each door is not an exit. It's a return to the self you shed, to the questions you dodged, to the dreams you abandoned at 3:07 a.m. with tears drying on your neck. This place isn't keeping you. It's offering you a chance to arrive. Because here's the paradox. The harder you try to escape yourself, the more often you find yourself again. Not in punishment, but in poetry. Not in regret, but in reformation. Every exit you've taken from the relationship you left, the identity you burned, the city you ran from, the faith you outgrew was a door you called the end, but which secretly opened inward. You thought you were leaving, but you were arriving all along. There's a philosophy that calls this Ouroboros of identity, the snake that eats its tail, the self that circles back. In Tibetan mandalas, too, the outer ring is fire, the burning away of illusion, but walk inward, and you find not escape, but the calm center of being. The path inward often disguises itself as the way out. Maybe this is what dreams try to teach us. You flee from a monster, only to realize the monster is you in another form. You try to wake up and find you've only woken into another layer. The exit, again, was never a way. It was deeper. You sit on the cold stone floor now. You've stopped opening doors, not out of defeat, but out of a strange serenity. The kind that comes when you stop searching and start listening. You hear something now. A low hum again, but not from the door. From within your chest. It's not music, it's memory. You remember a moment from childhood. The first time you ran away. You were 5. You packed 2 cookies, your favorite crayon, and a stuffed fox. You made it to the sidewalk before the dark looked too big. And you turned around. That was the first door. You've been walking through versions of it ever since. Every ambition that said, I'll be happy when. Every spiritual hunger that said truth must be out there. Every relationship you called home. And every goodbye you whispered while lying to yourself that it was freedom. Each was a door. And each brought you here. And so you realized the exit was never a destination. It was a mirror. In ancient Sufi texts, there's a phrase, he who flees the world flees himself. He who flees himself flees God. Not as punishment, but because there is no real elsewhere. Only reflections. Only returns. You lean your head against the wall. You are tired. But it's not the tiredness of the body. It's the soul's ache from trying to become something it already is. Like chasing your own shadow only to find it lives inside your feet. This room, this supposed final chamber has no doors now. No windows. Just stillness. A silence that isn't empty but thick with meaning. You realize you are the hallway. You are the dreamer and the dreamed. You are the place you were trying to escape from, and the one who built the illusion of escape. You let your breath slow. You no longer need another threshold. You don't need a light at the end. You are the light, the corridor, the turning point. This is the paradox that undoes them all. The door you called exit was always the entrance back into your most unguarded self. And as your eyes close, just before sleep takes you, you don't reach for the handle. You let the door remain shut. Because finally you have nowhere left to run. And it's beautiful. There is brilliance so pure. It erases contrast. You find yourself in a chamber so vast and silent. Even light hesitates before entering. But it does enter not from any direction, not from any sun or flame or star, but from within the walls themselves. A light without source. A light without opposite. And what's strange, deeply strange, is that in this place, nothing casts a shadow. Your feet leave no shade on the ground. The furniture floats unmoored by darkness. Even your own body, which you reach out to touch, is illuminated equally from every angle, as if reality itself forgot how contrast works. Wherever you turn, the same thing happens. You move your hand before your eyes, expecting at least a veil of dimness, and there is nothing. No interruption. No darker version of yourself stretching across a wall. It is as if the rules of light were rewritten by someone who had never seen night. Philosophers often speak of illumination, Plato's cave, the Buddha's awakening, the Enlightenment as a metaphor for truth. But what if there is a light so pure that it blinds us to the very contrasts that help us define meaning? What if this is that light? You try to imagine how the ancients would have explained such a space, perhaps as the realm of angels, whose radiance needs no shadow, or a divine threshold the kind mystics describe when their soul steps beyond the veil of the world. In the Kabbalistic traditions, there is a story of a light so powerful, the world had to be shattered to make room for it. And in some interpretations of heaven, light is not what allows you to see, it is what is seen. A presence, not a beam. A being, not a tool. And yet here, inside this glowing room, it becomes strangely disorienting. You begin to long for a shadow, for something to push against. A whisper of dark that makes the light more real, because without shadow, without contrast, even brightness becomes meaningless. Your mind aches for edges, for boundaries. The corners of reality blur. You reach out and there is no depth. Everything feels near. Everything feels flat. And then it hits you. You've entered a paradox. A world so full of light that you cannot distinguish form. A truth so unbroken that it becomes indistinguishable from illusion. This light is too much not in brilliance, but in sameness. It does not burn. It erases, slowly, softly, like mist. You sit, not because you are tired, but because it is the only way to stop floating in this shapeless serenity. The floor receives you kindly. It is warm, though you cannot see why. Perhaps this is what the mystics meant when they said the divine is unknowable, not because it is hidden, but because it is all visible. When everything is revealed, nothing can be recognized. You close your eyes and finally, there is contrast. Darkness reasserts itself, gentle and welcome. Inside your mind, shapes return. The memory of lines and borders, the hush of difference, and you understand, even light, without resistance, becomes its own kind of blindness. Even truth, without tension, becomes forgettable. You open your eyes again. The light remains perfect, sourceless, unconditional. But now, you do not fear it. You do not need it to explain itself. You simply sit inside it, letting your breathing match its rhythm. Inhale, form dissolves. Exhale, awareness returns. Perhaps the lesson is not to seek light alone, but to seek meaningful light, the kind made sacred by its interplay with shadow. Perhaps the soul, like a painter, needs both brightness and depth. And maybe the brightest truths are the ones that let you step away from them, so you can see what they really are. Let's stay here a little longer, just breathing in contrastless light, letting it unname the world, letting it soften your mind like silk against the dark. And then we move again. Some things are real until we name them. You sit beside a river of thought, still and silver in the dark. A breeze moves through your mind like it's made of reeds. Something flickers in you, a feeling. Perhaps. But the moment you try to grasp it, give it shape, whisper it into words, it's gone. The truth you felt has shifted. Not disappeared, not entirely, but altered, distorted by the act of being spoken. Like a reflection disrupted by the sound of your own voice. This is one of the gentlest paradoxes, and one of the most haunting, that some truths cannot survive exposure. That the moment we try to describe something too profound, we turn it into something else, something smaller, something explainable. You think of love, the kind that moves through your bones without asking, the kind you feel when someone brushes your hand without meaning to. How do you say that? You could call it longing, intimacy, attraction. But those words are pale ghosts of the moment. A label is not a kiss. A sentence is not a soul. There's a reason sacred traditions guard their truths in silence. In Taoism, the very first line of the Tao Te Ching warns, "The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. That which is most eternal cannot be named, not because it is weak, but because it is vast." Words are too narrow to carry what the spirit knows without language. In Zen Buddhism, when a disciple asked the master, "What is truth?" the master simply raised a finger, or struck the ground, or remained still. The silence wasn't evasive. It was precise, more precise than any sentence could be. Because truth is not always a statement. Sometimes, truth is the pause between questions. Even the Christian mystics understood this. Meister Eckhart once said, "God is no thing." The more you try to define the divine, the more you reduce it to something finite, something human-sized. And so, paradoxically, to know God is to let go of the idea of God altogether, to let the mystery remain wild and unnamed, like wind through tall grass. You feel this even in your own memory. That moment from childhood, you know, the one where the light hit the wall just so, or someone you loved looked at you without speaking. You could write it down. You could tell the story. But somehow, it would be less. Because the magic was in what couldn't be said. There's a story from the Sufi tradition of a man who searched the desert for years to find the name of God. He found a scroll buried beneath a dune, and on it, the name was written. But the moment he read it aloud, the scroll turned to dust. The name was not meant to be spoken, only held, only known by not knowing. In modern philosophy, Ludwig Wittgenstein wrestled with this paradox too. His Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus ends not with certainty, but with surrender. Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent, not out of failure, but reverence. Because some things do not belong to language. They belong to presence, and still, we speak, because we are creatures of language, and we try. We tell poems and stories. We carve names into stones. We whisper secrets into the night, hoping they will survive the light. And sometimes they do, but often they change in the telling. Not lies, exactly just shadows of what once was whole. Even the brain that marvel of perception simplifies everything it sees into symbols. The smell of rain becomes petrichor. The swell in your chest becomes nostalgia. And that helps you survive, helps you think, helps you share. But it also breaks something. You don't feel the rain anymore, you categorize it. You don't sit with the ache, you name it. Explain it. Bury it in understanding. That is the cost of articulation. There are moments when you catch yourself mid-sentence, realizing that the thing you meant to say has already faded. That the moment was full, but the words arrived late and hollow. And so, tonight, perhaps you can do something braver than speaking. You can listen to the space between thoughts, to the breath that comes before language, to the truth that sits like a quiet guest in your chest, asking for no introduction. There is a stillness that cannot be narrated. There is a knowing that cannot be taught. Let that be enough. Let the silence between us be a sacred space. Let the truth come to you not in syllables, but in stillness. Because the most beautiful things, the deepest loves, the oldest memories, the wildest dreams do not survive when pulled into language. They ask only to be felt, known, revered, and then released. So as you lie here, eyes soft, breath slow, resist the urge to name what you feel. Just feel it. Let it shimmer in the dark, like a dream that refuses to be written down. Because once you name the truth, truly name it, it may no longer be the truth at all. There is a kind of emptiness that holds the whole sky. Close your eyes, just for a moment longer. Imagine yourself not as a person, but as a space. A wide, silent clearing. A place where the wind passes without resistance, where no thought echoes too loudly, and nothing clings. You are not gone. You are simply open. This is the paradox you're about to meet. That nothing true, nothing may be the most powerful thing in the universe. That emptiness is not absence, but potential. A womb, not a void. You've heard that before. Perhaps in gentle whispers from ancient wisdom. In Buddhist thought, shunyata, often translated as emptiness, is not a nihilistic nothingness, but the interbeing of all things. Everything is empty because everything is interconnected. Nothing stands alone. You are not a fixed thing. You are not your thoughts. You are not your story. You are an ever-changing field of awareness, a cloud passing through itself. A note being sung and forgotten at the same time. And that is a kind of nothing. A soft, divine nothing. The kind of nothing that holds room for every possible becoming. You think of outer space, that vast, dark quiet we so often call empty. But it's not. Within that silence are stars forming, galaxies colliding, time itself bending. Emptiness is simply what existence looks like before it takes shape. It is the canvas of being. In the Hindu Upanishads, the ancient sages say that Brahman, the ultimate reality, is beyond all qualities, including existence or non-existence. It is described as neti-neti, not this, not that, beyond form, beyond sound, not something you can point to, not a thing, not even a thought, but the silence beneath all thought, the space between all things. In quantum physics, there's the vacuum state, the lowest possible energy level of a system. Empty, right, but no, even here. The so-called vacuum seethes with virtual particles popping in and out of existence. The nothing isn't empty at all. It's humming with unrealized possibility. What you think is void is creation in waiting. And maybe that's true of your soul too. When you feel most lost, most undone, most silent, maybe that's not the end of you. Maybe it's the beginning of something you haven't yet imagined. A you beyond the name. A you that doesn't need a story to exist. You may remember a dream you had once, or perhaps it was only a feeling of standing in an endless white room with no walls, no sound, no time. At first it felt lonely, and then it didn't. It felt like home, because nothingness is not the opposite of life. It is the cradle of it. Zen calls it mu, the ungraspable, the answer that is not an answer. A monk once asked Master Zhaozhou, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" And the master simply replied, "Mu." Not yes, not no, just emptiness. Just the place where all answers dissolve. And maybe that's what you're resting into tonight. Not sleep, exactly. Not even dreaming, but a kind of falling into the infinite pause between thoughts. There's a line from the mystic poet Rumi that drifts into you like smoke. Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure. Pain empties us. But in that emptiness, something else arrives. Space. Stillness. The kind of peace that doesn't depend on circumstance. The kind that simply is. Even language reaches its limit here. What do you call something that is not a thing? What do you name a truth that has no form? Perhaps the silence between these words is saying more than the words themselves. In the Gospel of Thomas, a mystical early Christian text, Jesus is said to whisper, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. But what is within you? Nothing and everything. A field of quiet, a boundless well. Tonight, maybe you don't need to bring forth anything at all. Maybe it's enough to be that field, that still well, that listening ear that listens even to the silence. You do not have to try. You do not have to search. You are already the thing you think you are seeking. Just like the sky does not look for itself. Just like the ocean does not have to remember how to wave. Just like breath doesn't need to understand air. There is an old Taoist tale of the empty boat. A man is crossing a river in fog when he sees another boat drifting toward him. He shouts, "Steer clear," but the boat keeps coming. Furious, he prepares to fight, but when the boat reaches him, he sees it is empty. No one inside. And suddenly, there's nothing to be angry at. The river is just the river. And so are you. When you become the empty boat, nothing can wound you. Not because you are numb, but because you are free. No ego to defend. No self-image to uphold. No name to burn. Just movement through water. Just being. This is not nothingness that erases you. It is the kind of nothing that gently reveals you were never apart from the all. Like the hollow in a flute, it is the nothing that allows the song. Like the silence in your chest, it is the space where your soul breathes. So tonight, let yourself dissolve softly, not disappear, just unharden. Let the edges blur. Let your name soften like mist on glass. Let your memories rest. Let your heart become a quiet field again. You are not losing yourself. You are returning to the source of all things, the nothing that is not empty, the nothing that becomes everything. The moment where reality blinks and lets go. It begins so subtly, you almost miss it. A change in the color of the dark. A flicker in the silence. A breath you didn't take. The world, once liquid and dream soft, starts to ripple like the surface of a pond disturbed by something from above. But you haven't opened your eyes. Not yet. You're still within that final hush, the seam between dream and waking, where thoughts aren't quite yours, and time hasn't made up its mind. A realm where paradoxes live easily and truths pass through your fingers like mist. And in that space, something begins to form. Not a sentence, not an image, not even a word, but the suggestion of an idea, the last thought before you wake. It doesn't arrive like thunder. It slips in like a tide, rising beneath your senses, without sound or shape. You feel it more than know it. Like déjà vu, like a memory of something that never happened, but feels more real than anything that did. The last thought before you wake is not always a thought in the way we usually mean. Sometimes, it's a person, a voice, a place you've never seen but know like the lines in your palm. Sometimes it's an emotion with no name. Sometimes it's a question that leaves its echo ringing through your bones. And sometimes, it's a secret you never meant to keep from yourself. This is the edge of consciousness, a thin, shimmering veil where your sleeping self and waking self meet and, for a breathless moment, recognize each other. You've been here before, many times, perhaps every morning, but you forget. We all do. The last thought before waking is a fragile thing, like a snowflake held too long in a warm hand. But what if, tonight, you remember it? What if you catch it by the tail before it vanishes? Hold it just long enough to see what it truly is. A message, a memory, a riddle, a mirror. Perhaps it's the answer to something you haven't yet dared to ask. Or perhaps it's the question itself, a question so delicate and true that it folds reality in half just by existing. In some cultures, they say that the soul returns to the body each morning. That when we sleep, we wander not just in the folds of imagination, but across other realms entirely. And the last thought is the soul's signal flare, the breadcrumb trail back to who you were before you awoke. Maybe that's why it always feels a little sacred, a little sad, a little beautiful, like watching a bird disappear into the morning sky knowing it was yours for a moment. And that's enough. The last thought before you wake does not obey logic. It does not explain itself. It lingers like the scent of something ancient, burned into the walls of your mind. Sometimes it's a feeling of being watched, not by something threatening, but by something impossibly gentle. A presence that has always been there, waiting, observing, loving. Sometimes it's a color that doesn't exist, a sound with no source, a wordless understanding between you and the universe. And sometimes it's silence, not the absence of sound, but a presence so still it feels like listening. If you've ever woken with tears and not known why this is why, if you've ever awoken laughing, with joy that made no sense, this is why. The last thought before you wake carries the residue of all your other selves, the versions of you who dreamed different dreams, who lived different lives in the shadowlands of sleep. Maybe one of them figured it out. Maybe one of them whispered it back to you just in time. There is a theory that dreams are not escape, but instruction, that your sleeping mind is not idle, but working decoding symbols, healing trauma, stitching together the paradoxes you cannot bear in daylight. And the last thought before you wake is the summary, the final, encrypted truth, the line at the end of the cosmic essay. You won't always remember it, That's okay. Some truths are too big for the mind to carry consciously, but sometimes you do remember just enough to feel haunted, not in a frightening way, but in the way a melody haunts, the way a familiar stranger does, the way you feel when you almost remember something important and can't quite grasp it. You walk through the day with that weightless ache in your chest, the strange longing for something you know you never had, but still miss. That's the last thought before you wake. Or rather, its echo. Some say it's the soul waving goodbye to the dream world. Some say it's the dream world waving back. And what if that moment, the moment between sleep and waking, is actually the most honest moment you ever live? A moment unshaped by ego, untouched by performance, just raw awareness, blinking in the dark, no masks, no stories, just you. You, without trying to be anyone. You, before the names come flooding back. You, in the in-between. The Tibetans call it the bardo, the space between death and rebirth. Perhaps we pass through a smaller bardo each morning, forgetting the vastness we just came from, as we squeeze ourselves back into skin and identity. And maybe, just maybe, the last thought is the message we bring back with us. A souvenir from the void. Have you ever awoken with a sentence in your head? A strange phrase, whispered with urgency. A voice that doesn't sound like yours, but speaks your truth more clearly than you ever could. Have you ever dreamt of being someone else, only to wake and feel that they are still part of you? That's the mystery. That's the edge. In that final moment, the world does not demand sense. It does not require you to be logical, productive, or coherent. It simply allows you to be fully, briefly, tenderly. And then you return. The body stiffens slightly. The mind recalls the date. The light filters in. The illusion resumes, but something lingers. A softness, a hush, a secret you carry, though you've forgotten the words. And perhaps, just perhaps, the last thought is not yours alone. It may be the world itself whispering something as you drift back. A message from the stars, a murmur from your childhood, a forgotten promise between lifetimes. You may never know. But in that blink between dream and daylight, you were more than a body, more than a mind. You were a question being asked by the universe. And for a moment, you were the answer. 2. Now open your eyes slowly, gently, like you are returning from someplace sacred, because you are. And the last thought before you woke, it's still breathing in your chest, waiting for nightfall to return. And now, just pause. Let all the paradoxes float, like lanterns drifting beyond the edges of your thoughts. You don't have to hold them. You don't have to solve them. Some things, the deepest truths, the most impossible questions, the softest dreams are not here to be understood. They're here to be felt, to echo quietly in the mind, like a bell still ringing after it's struck. You've wandered through hallways of logic, dreams, and mirrored illusions. You've met the part of you that watches, that forgets, that wakes, and still dreams. Let your body sink now. Let your breath deepen, like waves rolling farther from shore. There is nothing left to chase, no thought that must be held. In this quiet space, you are safe. In this stillness, you are whole. No more questions tonight. Only sleep. Now you're safe. The world can wait. Sweet dreams.